Welcome back, everyone. Today we're continuing our series on the Charon who, despite the discrimination, the fear, and the long history of prejudice, still work under the Empire. Last time, we explored Sybil and the potential facade she presents to the world. This time, we're focusing on someone whose entire childhood was shaped by that same divide, Daphne. Daphne isn't a full Charon, she's half. Born to a Silurian mother and a Charon father, who was also part of the military for the Empire. He would hide the fact that he was her father. Daphne knew who her father was. She knew he was a Charon, but in public, he refused to let her call him Dad, terrified that any slip could expose their connection and put her reputation at risk. Imagine growing up like that, knowing your father, but never being allowed to acknowledge him. And yet, despite understanding better than most what Charon's face, despite having her father leave at the age of 4, Daphne still chose to serve the Empire. To her, it wasn't loyalty out of fear. It was loyalty to her ideals, a belief that the world could still be shaped into something better. Before we go any further, here's your spoiler warning. We'll be discussing key plot points, character motivations, and the truths behind Daphne's upbringing. If you're early in the story, consider this your heads up. In today's video, I have a few questions to discuss. What happens when your ideals collide with the world as it truly is? Daphne has built her entire life on conviction and purpose, but will those ideals survive the empire she serves? Or will reality shatter the beliefs she fought so hard to uphold? Let's dive in. Daphne is half Charon, half Silurian. Daphne was a sick child, actually on the verge of dying. No amount of medicine or doctors was able to help her. It wasn't until her grandmother came to pay her a visit. Her mother and grandmother are both alchemists. Long, long ago, mankind dreamed of driving out sickness like the gods themselves. They ground every herb and root they could find, and many years later, we gained the draughts and tonics we call medicine. These are alchemy, what is called Geshi and Huahu. I don't know how to pronounce that word. I'm just gonna put it up on the screen because I know I'm gonna butcher it. And the science in Athery? Man, that sentence is a mouthful. She kissed the girl's pale cheek. Believe in the power of the great alchemy, Daphne. You will wake, for alchemy is an art that brings happiness to humankind. With this, Daphne woke up, and she lived on after that. It was this moment that set her resolve to also become an alchemist and take up the family's calling. Daphne went to the Royal Alchemy Academy, which is in Tasmania, the capital of the Empire. This is where Daphne meets Sybil. At this time, it was mandatory for new students to give speeches. For Sybil, she didn't need to listen to what they said, because it was always the same thing. Pledge loyalty to the Hyperborea, vow to sacrifice all for the Empire's glory, blah blah blah. Then Sybil happens to catch the name of the last student giving her speech. Daphne Theo something, she thinks she heard. Sybil remembered that it was her former mentor who talked about her. This girl, Daphne Theodore, is bright, as clever as you were once. Only 15, but certain to become a fine alchemist one day. Sybil didn't understand what she meant. The Alchemy Academy wasn't exactly short of geniuses. Bored, Sybil continued reading her book. Daphne at the end of her speech said, "So let me end with my true ideal. Alchemy is the study that brings happiness to humankind. That is why I stand here today." Sybil closed her book. She understood the age that they lived in, one growing steadily more vulgar, where people had learned to sneer at ideals and dreams. And here, in a hall where madness and cold-bloodedness were the fashion, Daphne's words were nothing short of a declaration that she was a relic of the past, or a naive child, blind to how the world truly worked. The freshmen were laughing, but quickly stopped as soon as they saw Sybil stand up and applaud Daphne. Sybil Mason, senior officer of the Legion, and honorary dean of the Academy, the laureled Charon they scorned for her blood, yet still bowed to her in fear. And so, begrudgingly, they followed her lead and clapped along. At the time, Sybil paid it no mind. What stirred in her was only a trace of cruel amusement. It had been a long time since the Spathatoi had seen one who still carried such outdated guileless ideals. And all Sybil wished to know was this. Once the Academy's facade was stripped away, when all that remained was bare flesh and bone, how long would the ideal of this girl, Daphne Theodore, endure? Sybil one day invited Daphne over to her private residence. Daphne had no idea why a senior Legion officer would call her over, especially to her private home. Daphne arrived early, but offered to help Sybil in the kitchen. Sybil shared that she was never one for servants or maids. She did everything herself. Before Daphne could finish her sentence about offering help in the kitchen, Sybil gets a phone call. Sybil asks Daphne to grab the phone and hold the receiver to Sybil's ear. Daphne can hear the phone call as well. Sybil doesn't seem concerned by that. It was one of Sybil's men. They have 2 Forsaken spies in custody, and have been torturing them for 4 days now, but they still refuse to give up any names. Sybil tells her men to strike what is softest. The soldier explains that they already threatened their lives. They would rather die than give up the information. Sybil explains what she means by the softest part. Do not threaten them with death. Tempt them with hope. Say this, the one who speaks will die, but his brother will live. The soldier understood and hung up. Daphne remained silent. Sybil turned and started walking ahead, and Daphne followed in silence. Sybil asked her, Daphne, you wish to know the brother's fate, do you not? Sybil held out a glass of pomegranate juice and said, then stay and witness their end. Daphne did want to know. Sometime later, the phone rang, and it was the same voice from earlier. The elder brother has confessed his contact. We're already moving to make the arrest. As promised, we released the younger, even returned his sidearm. Daphne exhaled in quite a relief, only for her smile to falter at the next words. The younger brother couldn't bear the thought that his brother had traded such precious secrets for his life. Once free, he raised the pistol to his own head and pulled the trigger. After Sybil gets off the phone, Daphne questions why she was there. She asks Sybil, you knew this would happen. That's why you're not surprised. You brought me here today, so I'd hear it with my own ears. Daphne asks Sybil if the Dean put her up to this to try to persuade her to serve the Empire. Sybil said Dean Silas' grievances don't concern her. Sybil said flatly, Daphne, I brought you here for one reason. To show you what it takes to survive. Whether in the Legion or the Academy, empathy must be kept in measure, sharp enough to sense weakness, never so unchecked that it renders you useless. Excess empathy won't just make you useless, Daphne. It will drag you into your own misfortune. We also learn that Daphne has another friend named Amelia, whose father was injured during the war. He lost a leg and then had other injuries from the war. He just suffered. He was in so much pain. So Amelia and Daphne worked together to try to create a new pain drug to help these soldiers ease their pain. It wouldn't cure them, but at least it would make them more comfortable. They were calling it AG 1899. Unfortunately, there was a terrible accident and Amelia died. Daphne would visit Amelia's father after she had died. She wanted to keep him company in his dying days. He had lost one leg and the other one was infected. He begs Daphne to just shoot him because he can't even do anything, and the last of his family had died. Daphne begs him to wait for 6 months to a year. She wants to find him a cure. Later in the timeline, Sybil and Daphne are having a conversation. Sybil must have just recently became chief, because Daphne starts calling her Miss Sybil. They're discussing Daphne's actions because apparently she has ticked off Dean Silas. It turns out Daphne lied. She submitted a fake proposal on a serum that Mr. Silas wanted, but instead, Daphne used that funding for this fake proposal to work on the medicine that she and Amelia were working on. She believed this medicine held far greater value. She begs Sybil to use her power to mass produce this medicine to help soldiers. Sybil doesn't deny that this medicine could help, and that other alchemists could do this, but it would take more time. However, Sybil explains that with this stunt, any research that Daphne does from now on will be monitored very closely. But Daphne is not interested in working on anything else for the Dean. She does not want to work on the intensification project as demanded. She does not want to become the next Amelia Gaston. Amelia Gaston was assigned to this project before they could finish the medicine they were developing, but the Spathatoy ordered her to. According to Sybil's reports, she died 6 months ago to a berserk test subject. But Sybil isn't concerned because she believes Daphne would not make the same mistake. Daphne, however, says that the report was inaccurate. The test subjects stabbed Emilia, and even with blood everywhere and still impaled, she kept telling the test subject over and over again that she was sorry for what they did to them. Emilia didn't forget the restraints, like the report says. She did it on purpose to try and save the test subjects, but couldn't stand doing any of these experiments on humans. Sybil blows it off, saying those test subjects were just dregs of society. She sees them as lower class. Now, this next part, I'm just gonna play it out.
Most Charons are cold, selfish, and cunning. Turn your back and they'll sink their fangs into your heel without a second thought. And I'm no different. Cold, selfish, cunning. If you stood above me, you'd crush me. Just as easily as I could crush you now. But you don't. Mercy is a privilege of the strong, Daphne.
You're right. Amelia unshackled that test subject out of kindness. And he repaid her with a blade to the heart. Yes, they're cold and cunning. But who made them that way? Chief. No. Sybil. I've made my choice, and I won't turn back. Alchemy exists to make life better. That's the ideal I believed in when I entered the academy.
Sybil at least admits who she is and doesn't hide the fact that she's cold. The other thing that shows how long they've known each other is the fact that Daphne does not fear calling her Sybil. And the fact that Sybil doesn't correct her shows that they've known each other for a while and have a good relationship with each other. Well, as decent as these two can be, I guess. Now I'm gonna let this scene play out again.
Since you're so set on it, I'll give you a few pieces of advice. You have been at the academy for so long, and know so many course secrets. Silas will certainly not allow you to go wherever you please. So, you have 3 options now. A. Let them imprison you or commit you to an asylum, where you will spend the rest of your life. B. Put this gun to your temple and go straight to hell.
I've thought about both of these options. What's the third one?
C. File a transfer request to Fulvis. Head to the front lines and die like a maggot. The hail of bullets will shred your pride. The pain will rot your dignity. Watching your comrades fall one by one will grind your will to dust. And in the end, a meaningless death will devour what you once believed in. But if, by some miracle, you survive, then come back to me. And tell me if you still stay true to your ideals.
And this leads us to a current day mission that we see in the main story, following the next main character. Daphne is a medic in the 13th Legion. The 13th Legion reports directly to Sybil herself, and she reports to the Emperor. We see Daphne with the dual protagonist that is in this game. They are in the middle of a battle, and Daphne is swamped trying to treat everyone's wounds. She is now reporting to Fulvis. Now, just a quick note here, when a soldier is talking to Daphne, she brings up someone who was her senior back at the academy. I'm going to assume that it was Sybil. There is a moment in her side story that I want to play before I get into the mission she is on with Fulvis.
As I moved through the path strewn with corpses, I could hear my own ragged breath, feel the thud of my own heartbeat. Never had I felt so small. I had bested my classmates, survived experiments, overcome pain. I once thought I was invincible. But now I understand. There are far more things I cannot conquer than those I can. Still, whatever lies ahead, when this battle ends, whether I make it out alive or only my soul returns, I hope I can carry these words to Sybil Mason. Daphne Theodore stays true to her ideals.
We shall see throughout this story if she stays true to her ideals. Daphne is ordered to take care of the wounded. She herself ends up injuring her own leg, so the commander, Avar, orders her to stay back and continue to help the wounded. They are in the middle of a battle against the Forsaken. The Forsaken are using filthoids against them. Unfortunately, this battle is not looking good. The 13th Legion is fighting the Forsaken over the Lanza Fortress. The other problem is Fulvis is a Solarian, and he only sees Charons as sacrificial lambs, so he does not care about how many men he is losing. At some point in this mission, we learn that Avar is actually Daphne's father. Daphne took her mother's last name. They hid the fact that Avar is her father. He thought it was best for her so she could grow in her career. A long time ago, the chief alchemist, who we learned from Sybil's story is Miss Flamel, thought the world of Daphne. She made an exception for Daphne because she believed that Daphne's unique skills are what set her apart from the others. So Avar wanted to make sure no one knew her father was a Charon. Now fast forwarding a bit through the mission, the main character comes across information about Avar. It seems someone is setting him up as a traitor and planting false evidence. Avar and the main character set it up to look like you died in this mission. Then in comes Fulvis. He starts to talk about his schemes to Avar. Fulvis's right hand is another Charon named Falsi. Fulvis and Avar begin to chit-chat, and long story short, Fulvis is a traitorous asshole. His grand plan is ultimately because he is a racist asshole that doesn't like Charons. He thinks there are too many Charons in the military, and that their numbers are growing, and he doesn't like that. So Avar tries to say that they can now blame the dead main character, but Fulvis doesn't care. He wants Avar dead as well. They want to use him as an excuse to show that Charons can't be trusted. And, no surprise, Sybil is the main target. Fulvis wants power, and Sybil is in the way. Avar tries to reason with Fulvis, and uses leverage. At this point, Avar wants him and his people to stay alive. The problem is, Avar is a dumbass. He tells Fulvis what he needs to know right then and there. And, well, long story short, it doesn't work. Fulvis has no problem killing Avar, and then Falsi set the place on fire. When the main character comes through, and the place is on fire, you find Avar dead on the ground. Then we hear over the loudspeaker, there is an announcement that Daphne Theodore is a Forsaken spy, and she is to be executed on sight. The main character did have a recording device on her, but Falsi took that, but she has to move quickly to get out of there. You reunite with Daphne, and this is when the two of you begin to make your escape. You also explain to Daphne that Avar was shot and killed, and that his last words were to make sure that Daphne made it out safely. Unfortunately, they also come across the men who were in their unit. Fulvis is killing all of Avar's men. Avar's men were protecting Daphne so she could make her escape. Daphne overhears a soldier talking to Falsi, and apparently Sybil is on her way as well. She heard the battle turned and is now on the way herself. They continue to run through the sewers to try to get out. At one point, the main character wants to switch clothes with Daphne to help her escape, but Daphne is tired of her dad, and now you, trying to bear the weight and make these decisions to do what's best for Daphne. She wants to work together with you to escape. They are both going to make it out. So Daphne instead thinks of another plan. They turn themselves in to Sybil. Daphne points out that Chief Sybil is a graduate from the academy. She wouldn't tolerate betrayal from anyone, not even the ones she holds dear. But it's also why Daphne believes that Sybil would carefully review any acts of treason. She would not make any hasty decisions to execute the suspects. She will more than likely throw them in the Imperial prison. That is the safest refugee to prove their innocence. They manage to find Sybil and turn themselves in. And as Daphne said, Sybil puts them in the prison. Now, we don't see Daphne much. We just see the main character talking to Hellfire, the warden of the prison, stating their side of the story. At one point, they put them in a room together to see if they're truly lying. Maybe they would take the opportunity to make sure their stories lined up. And of course, they are innocent, so their conversations were just about Avar's last moments. Sadly though, Hellfire returns to them with bad news. Hellfire got the orders to just immediately execute them. There is a list of signatures on this order, and not even Chief Sybil could stop this order. Falsey has also gone missing, and since she took the recording device from you, they have no other way to prove their innocence. In the middle of the discussion, they get a visitor. It's the prince. The Emperor has written a pardon for you and Daphne. This guy is the brother of the Emperor, Prince Virgilus. He wants to talk to the main character alone. He wants the main character to serve as his bodyguard for the next 6 months. Now, I'm not going to get into this mission, because this video is focused on Daphne. The prince tells you not to worry about Daphne. Sybil Mason is an old friend of Daphne's. Sybil is aware of their innocence, so she will make sure that Daphne is safe. After Daphne was released from prison, there is also another update we learn about Emilia's father. Daphne went back to the hospital where he stayed. When she went back to visit him, she was getting dirty looks from the staff and she hears the whispers. They have heard of her traitorous actions. When she went to visit Emilia's father, she learned that he had died. He committed suicide. Daphne asks him about the medicine she sent. She said she had sent the medicine that she and Emilia had worked on together. The other medics said that he died the night before it arrived. And plus, he was a veteran in the military. He probably wouldn't have taken it if he learned that a traitor was the one who made it. 4 days have passed since she was released from the prison. She's back at her family's home. The maids are concerned because she hardly eats. It is a rainy night and, outside beyond the gates of their home, she could see a group of people. They seem to be repeat visitors. Apparently, they are former classmates of Daphne from the academy. Daphne decides to go down and check. The maid says that she shouldn't, because they've come for her. Daphne feels she doesn't have a choice either. The last thing she wants is for these guys to wake up her mother. Daphne goes downstairs and steps outside, with no umbrella. Daphne confronts them and asks, "What do you want to say?" The walls of Theodore Estate are smeared with graffiti. Traitor, demon spawn. They step further away from the estate so Daphne's mother couldn't hear, but they begin yelling at her. "You betrayed Hyperborea, just like you betrayed the Alchemy Academy. Because of you, our brothers and sisters died young. How can you still wear that calm face? Why haven't you knelt and repented? Always the same Pios mask. Now we see your true face." They force her into a corner, and when she tries to speak, her voice is lost in the rain and they're screaming. She questions, why do people cling so stubbornly to the truth they chose to believe? Then all of a sudden, a fish strikes her in the gut, and when she goes down, a boot comes down on her hand that she had braced against the ground. In this moment, she thinks about her fallen comrades in this battle. Why do people shut their eyes to the suffering of others? At some point, we hear these guys ask, what's the point in talking to her? And they begin to throw out the name calling because she is a Charon. And they start to mention that she is a traitor like her father, Avar. The ringleader continues to talk, but his next sentence gets interrupted with him screaming and clutching his ear. Daphne is standing there with a pistol raised, fury blazing in her eyes. It is a fire that this rain is not going to put out. Insult my father again, and the next shot won't just graze your ear. She forced each word out through clenched teeth. Now get lost. Students of the academy weren't allowed to carry firearms in the capital. Though their mouths still spat curses, their feet carried them away at full run. She turns and looks back at her home, knowing that she could go back to a meal. But she does not want to return. She starts wandering aimlessly through the rain. Night comes, and she comes across a bridge that is vaguely familiar. She remembers Sybil lived near here. She sees a woman in violet standing on the bridge with an umbrella in hand. She sees Daphne at her lowest, Daphne thinks. She expects Sybil to sneer and asks if Daphne is still staying true to her ideals. Realistically, Daphne would have no answer. Yet, Sybil's face holds no scorn, no anger. It is as calm as the whispers when no wind stirs its surface. She hands Daphne an umbrella, almost casually. Go home, take a hot bath, change your clothes. Days later, there is a man who comes to Daphne's home to deliver a message. It's from Sybil. "Miss Theodore," the man said. "Chief Sybil has asked me to invite you to join a project, if you're willing. It's called the Second Scion Program." Now, we did hear her father talk about this to Fulvis. And the new main character is also aware of the Second Scion Program. Us viewers, we're just left with a cliffhanger. What do you all think of this story? What did you think of the ending, where Sybil provides Daphne the umbrella? Do you think that Daphne has given up on her beliefs? Was Sybil right? Let me know in the comments. What do you think is going to happen next with Daphne? I will admit, I wish I saw these stories before I did my Sybil video. And then of course, the day after I upload my video, the official Duet Night Abyss channel uploads an interview with the voice actors of Sybil. But overall, what do you think of these Charons working for the Empire? I haven't decided on which one to do next, but you'll know when you see it. Thank you for your continued support. Please check out my description for the Discord server if you'd like to join. And please help me out by hitting that subscribe button and the like button. See you guys next time. Bye!